Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome to Employment Matters Committee. As we are being live streamed, can I remind members to speak into their microphones, please? So, first item of business is apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Sands. Do we have any other apologies, please? Nope, thank you. Record of the meeting. Do members agree to approve the record of the meeting of the committee held on the 3rd of July 2025 and to also note the record of the meeting of the Joint Consultative Committee held on the 3rd of July 2025? Agreed. Thank you. Urgent matters by reason of special circumstances. There are none. Thank you. Declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest and other significant interests. Councillor Hamilton.
I'm a member of the National Education Union.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Going along. I'm a member of the NAHT.
And Councillor Peake.
I'm a member of Unison.
Thank you. And I'm a member of the ASLIF Trade Union. Thank you. So, staff survey 2025 results. Sam Farley, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report sets out our current staff survey results. The last time we undertook a staff survey was in September 2024. We're very much still in a state of transition. This is largely down to our constant strive for financial sustainability, ongoing repair and design of our new headquarters and our pending local government reorganisation, as well as the pay review. The survey sought views from employees against our priority areas, which included pay, reward, recognition, wellbeing, communications and engagement, and also seeks to measure how we're doing against our commitments in our employee engagement strategy 23 to 28. Back in 2024, we agreed a number of priorities that we've been focusing on, and they have largely been presented to the JCC this evening to talk through our areas of ongoing commitment. The survey was opened on the 30th of June to 25th of July for 1 month. We had a response rate of 55.5%. This is slightly lower than what we had back in 2024, 58%, but as you can see from the results within the paper, there is a degree of confidence within the results that means it is meaningful enough to take forward some areas of recommendation. Committee tonight have seen the results early, so we have yet still to go into more detail around the results, to do the cut-crossing data, to understand them further, and to speak to our officers so that they've got a voice and can add some context to the information that they've given us. We have a number of things that we will continue to work on as priority, and they are highlighted within the survey. However, it is to be noted we do have significant improvements in a number of areas, not least noting that there is still areas of concern that we will continue to work on. Committee are asked to note the contents of the report that has been presented tonight, and I'm happy to take any questions or suggestions, and also happy to come back to committee in a few months with what we're actually doing to respond to the survey results that the organisation has given us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sam, for the report. A couple of things. It is quite concerning that we've got sort of 10% of people that want to leave in the short term, where we do see positive in the report that's saying they're proud to work and they want to stay here. Do we understand more about why we've got 10% that want to leave in the short term? I think if we come on to there was some worrying things in the bullying section of how people are not feeling comfortable to report it. And also those that have reported. I sometimes understand why they can feel not satisfied with the outcome because they're not privy to all the information of what that outcome was, and unless it absolutely matches what their expectation was, that they're not always happy, and they have different expectations to some others. One question I have about the questionnaire, do you actually define what bullying is? Because I think bullying can mean lots of different things to different people. I mean, if someone's asked to make sure the report's done before they go home, they might interpret that as bullying, whereas a manager might interpret that as management. And I'd just like to know whether, you know, there's some definition of defining what bullying is in the survey so that people are clear. Because I do think there's a fine line between management and bullying, and if it's just one person in the office being asked that every single week, then that could tantamount to bullying. But if it's the same question going across everybody, it may not, but they may feel it is. So I just wanted to know whether you define what bullying actually is before they answer the survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Before you answer Councillor Hackmore's question, just on the percentage of people that want to leave the organisation, is there any benchmarking of that? Because in any organisation, there's always a percentage of people who want to leave. So that's really just on that, when you expand on that question, please. Thank you.
Just picking up on Councillor Printer's question about data on that. Is it possible to look at comparator councils in terms of their rates, but also the historic ones from ourselves over the last 5 years? That would be great.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. So if I pick up, first of all, on the working at Medway Council, Councillor Hackwell, in terms of those that want to leave, whilst we've got the majority of respondents that have said they want to stay with us for the period of time, which is at 63.8%, that has increased from the previous survey, so that's up by 7% in terms of people wanting to stay for longer. The 2.7% who want to leave as soon as possible, and the 7.4% who want to go within 12 months. Most of the reason there, so the leading reason, is around retirement, and we know we've got an ageing workforce. Having said that, part of that is also about opportunity to career progress. Now, within the survey itself, people having the opportunity to progress their career has increased by 10%. So we know that there's much more focus and commitment given to people improving their career. What we haven't had the opportunity to do is delve a little bit deeper into this and really understand, are people leaving because the opportunities are not here for them to progress their career, but they're having the right support in order for them to leave, to go on to other things because the opportunities don't exist. There's nothing jumping out at me from the early stuff that I've seen to think, oh my goodness, we've got a problem and people don't want to work here. And I think that's reflected in the other results around how people are proud to work at Medway and proud to tell others that they work here as well and would recommend us as an employer. So that's on the future element of Medway. In terms of the bullying question, we don't define in the survey what bullying means. There's a reason for this. We spoke about this last time as part of the lessons learned. Bullying sometimes is how somebody feels as opposed to what's happened. And there's got to be an appreciation for one person feeling it's acceptable if someone's given them a direct order, but someone else feeling quite pressured about that and seeing it as bullying. And we've got to consider people's feelings in what happens, and that's why HR operate within this space. However, having said that, I do think there's probably work we need to do as an organisation around a common understanding, perhaps, and that I wouldn't say the survey would be the right vehicle, but I absolutely recognise in terms of just having some open dialogue around expectations, feelings, what people are doing, and also for people to really put a mirror up to themselves around their own behaviours and how they might be making people feel. I think it's probably time for some real honest conversations. So it's a point that we will absolutely take forward. Thank you. Then, sorry, just jumping back, apologies, I missed the next two questions around people leaving the organisation. So we're part of some joint working with the Integrated Care Board, and we work with Kent County Council and the NHS, and we have a number of indicators that focus on the workforce. So annually we present a number of data pieces that look at this particular point. So we're just in a return at the moment for September and doing that return. So I could quite easily be able to get access to some comparable data across KCC and the NHS in particular. And whilst that largely focuses on care as a sector, it also looks at what we're doing across the workforce and sharing of that good practice, which is really beneficial. Not everybody presents their survey results, but we do have a Kent HR network. We've got a meeting this Friday, actually, so I'll happily ask the question to see if anybody would be willing to share so we can do some comparison for that. Thank you. And then in terms of if there is kind of like a benchmark, I guess, around those that would leave the organisation, within our workforce strategy, we've committed to having a turnover rate of 10%, recognising that there will be natural people that will want to go on to different careers because there's not opportunities here, but also the fact that it is really important that we bring in new talent into the organisation. So our aspiration is to move to 10%. We're not quite there, but we have seen a reduction, and we presented the figures at the last Employment Matters Committee. So we're on our way to achieving that. And if we look at the figures that were being presented, given that the survey only had a 55.5% completion rate, there's nothing jumping out on this to make me be worried that that figure of 10% isn't achievable for us as an organisation, particularly in light of all the increases across the number of indicators that were presented throughout the survey in terms of people feeling that Medway is a good place to work.
Thank you. Is it on that subject, Councillor Edmondson, or something else? Councillor Cook first then, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And it is actually just related to what you're saying. So my questions were about the completion rates. So really curious about the differences in directorate, and we've spoken about that in previous years around people physically being near a computer to be able to complete. And I know in previous years we've spoken about ways that we make this accessible for people. And then I was really curious about the fact that you then said that 31.4% who completed the survey were managers. And again, I don't know if we can say yet that it was more managers from BSD or more from RSC, but it just made me wonder if that meant that it was even more skewed in certain directorates, and whether that really did change some of these figures, and whether there's anything else we can do in terms of follow-up surveys with certain directorates. And also you mentioned in JCC about perhaps even changing the regularity, and whether that might then allow a longer period of time and other ways to increase the response rate. So I just wanted to explore that a little bit more, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Yeah, so we've had some soft feedback already, particularly from sites that are not necessarily sitting at a computer typically, around there being more engagement through voice. So people don't really want to fill in paper surveys. They want to have more conversations. So we're working with a number of managers in those remote sites really to look at how we might be able to achieve that, particularly if we're going to move with pulse surveys in the interim between the biannual survey that we're going to do. And I think that will give us a different opportunity to gather insight. So, you know, it's being really clear about what we're going to do with that, and making sure people have got that platform to do. So that's something that's been newly presented this year and hasn't come up before, which is really good because people feel confident and comfortable to talk, which I'm quite pleased about. In terms of the manager response rate being 31.4%, back in 2024 it was at 30%. The thing to say about Medway in terms of our managers are at all grades, so we will have people at range 3 who are managers as well. So we've really got to cut the data in terms of that kind of seniority as well as by teams to really understand where the percentages are coming from and what that looks like. But it is something that's on the list to do to understand the data a bit more. In terms of whether or not it's swayed the figures, I don't necessarily think it has because of the variation across all of the grades. You know, people are talking about how they value their role and what they do, and that's a real variation across the grades if the results show that those are a mix across those grades in terms of line managers. And I'm sure they will. I feel quite confident they will. It won't be all senior leaders having completed the survey. In terms of, I guess, the regularity of the survey, we took some feelers from the organisation around the fact that, you know, by the time we socialise these results and take the feedback from the organisation, we technically lose 3 or 4 months before we're really getting into any real kind of work to move things forward. And where we've done things of significance like the pay review, those things can't be done overnight, and we know that it takes a long time to actually do the task as well as embed the task and change the culture of behaviour around it. So, you know, when we've got results that were coming in that were marginally moving, people feel that we're asking the same question and it feels like it's going on for a long time. So the organisation was comfortable with us moving to that biannual element of it, but with the promise that if there was anything insignificant in the meantime that we had to sort voice on, we would still use our engagement forums, but also use the opportunity of a pulse survey, which would be shorter and more snappier and more to the point of the thing that we're trying to solve. And for us as an organisation, that's going to give us more real life feedback on an actual task rather than a moment in time that encapsulates the whole year. So we want to give this a go. We can review it again, but I would hope to think that that would give people more opportunities to have their voice heard in terms of us moving forward.
Councillor Hamilton, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got 2 areas that I've got questions around. So one is on page 22 around loneliness. I just wanted a little bit of clarity in terms of how the questions were framed. So the proportion of respondents who reported never experiencing feelings of loneliness or social isolation, is that within the workplace or is that within their actual life? That was the first thing, because obviously my next question will be dependent on that. But also I do find it quite alarming that we have around 2.3% of our staff who feel that they always feel lonely, and I'm wondering what proactive steps we could take to address that. And then the last question, because I'm going to put them all in one go, is around the harassment and bullying data as well. So I, like Councillor Hackwell, was quite alarmed at some of the results here. So we know that we had a 55.5% completion rate. We know that a substantial number of those respondents who completed have a managerial role, regardless of what grade that is at. And I'm just wondering, given some of the data around that, if there is a more significant issue with the 43.5% who haven't completed the surveys. And I'm just wondering how we would be able to do a deeper dive to investigate that, so that whatever steps we're taking are going to be the most effective ones, that we are a workplace that is truly inclusive here at Medway.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. I guess loneliness in the workplace, I would have to double check the question. My understanding is it says workplace, but I will go back and check that just to be absolutely clear. We've tweaked the survey year upon year just to try and make the questions more clear, so we've probably added words rather than taken them away, but let me take that away if I may, just to check that. In terms of the 2.3% always feeling lonely, so this was a priority back in 2022, particularly when we came out of COVID. We had really high percentages of staff feeling that. And when we was in the full swing of things through the wellbeing group, we did put in a number of initiatives that were like book reading clubs, lunchtime walks, and looking at things where bringing people together, not just through work-related activity. Some of that absolutely kind of went by the by when we had to kind of come out of the building. So we done most definitely Mental Health Week. I recall us doing a walk, which before there would have been lots of people attending and there was just a handful of people that were available to come in because of the people within the building. And moving forward through our wellbeing framework that we're doing, we've got a number of other initiatives in place that will look to address some of this. We've got an expert in public health who works in the community around loneliness. They also form part of the Medway Makers Group, and they've got a bit of capacity at the moment to really look internally with us at some of the things that we've got on and where that might be. We do need to cut this data, again, by teams, understanding it might not be Gunwharf related, it might be in the more rural sites where there's only a couple of people working. We know that we've got people housed in temporary buildings, if you like, and they might not see many people there. We just don't know at the moment. So we do intend to do more work around this, and it remains a priority for us moving forward. In terms of the harassment and bullying data, I guess, so back in, if you look at statistically how it's compared over the course of a number of years now, back in 2022, we had the question of discrimination, harassment and bullying combined, and that was in at 7% of people saying that they'd experienced it. When we split the question and it was just discrimination and harassment that came in, it was down to 6% and bullying was at 7%. So for the last part of that period, which is about 6 years, it's remained the same, which is really disappointing given the stuff that we've done as initiatives to move that forward. The element of, I guess, the manager's percentage being high and how that's been filled in, we know, particularly from conversations that we've had, managers, even though they might be a manager, they still might experience bullying from another manager, and we have a lot of layers within Medway, as I mentioned previously. So there's something to be said around cutting this data by that level to understand where there might be pressure points. We do know from the previous results where we've cut the data before, we have had teams that have needed some additional training, some additional work, and we've done that. So it'd be quite interesting to see if that has made a difference in those particular team results. Part of the difficulty on this is the lower down we go, we get to a point where we can't go any lower because the numbers become so small. So anything below 5 we don't report on. So even from a HR point, I wouldn't be looking into a team if the number was below 5. But it still gives us a sense of the directorate area in which the problem is coming from. Now, for me, you know, there's an element of people not wanting to report. As I mentioned previously, we revised the whistleblowing policy because the whistleblowing sounded very official, and we wanted it to be more that an opportunity for people to come forward and speak about concerns in a confidential way. The policy also stipulates you can do it confidentially. You don't have to put it your name to it. You can come and talk to us, and we won't ask you to step forward and do anything else about it. And also noting that there could be a perceived element of distrust with HR, that kind of triage group was opened up to other senior officers, so it wasn't just a HR decision, and it was actually being triaged by senior officers, and the monitoring officer is part of that. So when we first put that policy together, we did get quite I would say we were quite engaged with the organisation coming forward with concerns, not necessarily just discrimination, harassment and bullying, but general whistleblowing concerns where they felt they needed an outlet because it might be fraudulent activity, for example. This year has been particularly quiet, and you'll see a paper come to committee in December. And I don't know if it's because we haven't now done enough to keep talking about the thing, and maybe we've stopped and we've got a lot of new staff coming in, therefore people don't know how to report it, because there's 21% saying they don't know how to report it. Or I don't know if it's the lack of trust that they're hearing from people that have had their cases heard and they're dissatisfied, because that's high, that's 55% of people being dissatisfied, so people are thinking, crumbs, if the outcome isn't what I want it to be, is it worth it? So I think this is a real unknown area where we can make lots of assumptions about, but we've definitely got to cut this data and understand it more, and this can't be something that we can overlook. And what we've done previously, where we've had discouraging results, particularly back in 2022, we did invite people to come and talk confidentially without making a case on matters, just to give us a bit of insight and a bit of flavour. And we know that the trade unions are willing to work with us on that, and they might be a more trusted source rather than officers within the organisation. So we're absolutely working alongside trade unions to see if we can get underneath this with a bit more softer information. I do know we've got some free text comments that support some of this in statements. They're being data cleansed at the moment because there is an element of protection within the survey, which we promise. So that will give me a little bit more of an indication as to perhaps, again, those teams or the themes that might be coming from it. So much more to do around these particular topics, and they will remain high priority. We will be discussing it in corporate management team tomorrow, with no doubt with some more active action coming out of it and this being prioritised.
Yeah, Councillor Hamilton, do you want to come back?
Yeah, just two follow-up questions. So one on the loneliness. I'm just wondering, when you do the data insights, if you could look at what percentages are in lone working situations, because that would be probably something I would be concerned about, and generally, okay. And then the second one is really, it's going back to those who haven't responded to the staff survey. And given that we had such quite alarming results around bullying and harassment from the 55.5% who have completed the surveys, I would like us to move beyond just cutting the data to a more extensive analysis, so that the silent 44%, we can dig a bit deeper, because we want the solutions that are put in place to be the most effective ones.
Yeah, thank you. Just on the lone working bit, and obviously the other points raised by Councillor Hamilton, do we have a lone working policy? We do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'm sorry, I overlooked that point around those who hadn't completed the survey. We spend quite a bit of time talking to the areas where they've got low completion rates. We don't necessarily go out and demand to know why things have happened, but most definitely from particularly our medway makers, they're the engagement forum, and we really do work with the medway makers for them to go out and ask people generally why they didn't complete the survey and what their feelings were. As I mentioned, some soft feedback has come through to suggest that that's not how people want to give their voice. So we know we've probably got a percentage of people, quite a large percentage of people that fall into that category, but not everybody's had the opportunity to go out and ask those questions yet. So we will absolutely go into that. And, you know, the more we hear from people, the better it is for us, even though the degree of confidence within the results is high. We still want that figure to be much higher, and you know we do expect it to grow. So the more channels we can do in order to get that voice heard, then we absolutely will be seeking that. And yes, we do have a lone worker policy in place. We have a number of tools that support that and a number of help aids. It's all brigaded under our ways of working, and a lot of that was put into place following COVID, actually. And there's also a number of support tools. It's not just about the policy, it's about all the support tools that can go along to help people and how they can stay connected. There's probably work we can do there, particularly with people who are predominantly at home a lot of the time. You know, looking at some of the free text comments that have come in around how people get communication with their leaders, there's lots of positives there, but we've got to triangulate that then with that loneliness and see if there's any mismatches, and we just haven't had the opportunity to do that yet.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peake, I've got down next.
Thank you, Chair. So several subjects. When it comes to bullying, I'm actually really pleased to hear of your response, because you give me the sense that there's a true understanding of the various issues. And I'm going to use the word culture. I know how vague that is. I mean, how do you define that? What is it? But there is the case where people may ignore when they are aware of bullying. It could be a case of people literally being scared of somebody else, and there's a fear element, but then would never ever want to admit that. So it's a hard one then to crack. And there could be a case of people just don't want to know because it's more work, it's more grief, and look the other way. So having a culture where people openly talk about it, that's quite a big thing. I mean, it was a day and age, I remember, in my lifetime, where you would never ever talk about your mental health. It can be still a cultural thing. You know, culture I'm talking about is my dad's parents who were Cockneys. And I remember when my grandmother was ill, they would never ever in a million years have spoken about a subject matter like this. I only found out when I was much older, not when I was a child. So, you know, I just want to put perspective on that. So being aware of that and the issues around it, so it is a big challenge. Also, when it comes to loneliness, a lot of people may not generally even recognise that their loneliness is an issue. But if they do, they may not want to admit it either because nobody wants to be deemed as being no mates. There's a stigma there. So that's another one that's hard to crack. Moving on to, I do have a little list here, moving on to recruitment. Again, in the report, you show a lot of understanding about recruitment issues, and it's going in a good direction. Is there a claim that there aren't any areas of concern where there is still, on that particular area, a concern about recruitment and retention? I'm now referring to my day job, support worker, wanting to talk to people that work within Medway. So I flip to the other side, another person going to Medway in my day job. And the one big shortage we have time and time again when you want to support people with severe mental health is the lack of specialised, well, lack of social workers, full stop, but people that actually work in that area, therefore know their subject. Now, I may be a little bit out of date. I haven't worked permanently now for 2 years, but I just wanted to throw that out there, whether that is something that's been addressed or not. You also talked... sorry, I've lost it now, Chair. I might have to come back rather than keep you waiting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sam, did you want to answer the points so far? And if Councillor Peake comes back at all.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Peake. I mean, culture's in my job title, I absolutely agree with you. There's intended culture and there's culture that naturally manifests, and I would say we've been working with the culture of Medway, particularly in light of the changes that we've seen, particularly with a new chief executive and new administration. That has been significant culture change for us in the way we work as an organisation. The emphasis has changed most definitely in terms of the priority that we place upon engagement, which is much higher from particularly the chief executive doing his live shows, going out meeting the teams, and also then within the staff survey results themselves, the visibility of that senior leadership team and the access to that senior leadership team. And again, there's a number of underpinning questions within there. I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but most certainly people have confidence that action will be taken from the voice that they're giving their senior leaders, so things will change. So I think from a culture point, it doesn't change overnight, but I can definitely see some real positives from the staff survey around positive change in terms of the trust that's being placed back into the organisation. Moving that, though, into the area of bullying, harassment and discrimination, we at the Equality Board have spent quite a bit of time really trying to understand the organisational feel and the differences between the directorates and the different makeup between the directorates, particularly around equality. And we've really kind of landed in a position where we're trying to create a safe space for people to get it wrong, actually, as opposed to people taking offence to when it goes wrong, because there is still in pockets, and this isn't a general statement for the whole organisation because it's not happening across the organisation, but most definitely from a HR point, we often see There might be a situation where somebody might say something and somebody's taken offence to it, and rather than have that conversation around how somebody feels about what's happened and a dialogue happening and a learning experience, it becomes very defensive and instantly becomes a grievance or a bullying or harassment or discrimination claim. And we really want people to get a bit more comfortable about kind of supporting each other and having a safe space to, if you get it wrong, take the feedback, because actually you've got to learn from it and move on. And certain things that we've discussed is things like microaggressions and how they come across, and what might be banter to one person isn't to another, and it is about the feelings. So I don't think we have the solution. We've been working with an external provider looking at how we can get some more training in place, more specialist training. I don't think it's something we can deliver in-house, but I still think we've got real pockets where we've got to hold mirrors up and people have really got to reflect back and think about how they're behaving so we can avoid them becoming bigger issues moving forward. And I can see you got a hand up. Did you want to come back before I move on to the other part of recruitment?
Do you mind, Chair? Just particularly on feelings. My tenor went up. I can very quickly. I can remember a case where an employee made a formal complaint because her line manager had spoken to her as a kind of heads up, very, very briefly, about work the next day. But she wasn't, even though she was at her desk, she wasn't actually in working hours anymore. So, from the line manager's point of view, he's just done a heads up to help out. She made a formal complaint. It then came back that she was deemed to be quite vulnerable. And the fact that she was daughter of the director had nothing to do with this. And it was just completely shut down. What I'm encouraged from what you're saying is that you've got a culture where if an instance that took place, it would be discussed. Those feelings would be discussed to find out why did this person feel the need to make a complaint on something relatively really, really trivial. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And like I say, we find that it can escalate quite quickly, and sometimes it is about understanding. So there's probably much more we can do in that space. But it's creating, I suppose it's creating that safe space that people feel they can have those conversations. And I don't think we've got that fully in place at the moment. Moving on to recruitment and retention, in terms of concerns, we haven't cracked it in every area around our recruitment or our retention. We've still got pockets of significant concern. They do mirror that of a national position, but sometimes it does make us quite vulnerable of where we're placed. We're right next door to a large county authority, and we're right on the cusp of London. That makes it really quite difficult. The way we reviewed how we reward people, and this is about the total reward and package now, not just the pay, has gone some great bounds within the staff survey. That's up, 17%, where people are now generally more satisfied with our pay and reward. And again, the two questions that chime with me is the fact that people would recommend Medway as a place to work. That over the course of 6 years, that's gone up by 20%, which is significant. So I think we're getting ourselves into a much stronger position around that employer of choice. And we've got to get out there with our brand. We've really got to make ourselves known. We've really got to shout about the good things we're doing, particularly all of the stuff that we've got around the people promise that people rave about. So we're moving in the right direction, but we do absolutely still have concerns. And then in terms of specialist support for our staff internally, we have contracted specialist support. Some of those contracts are coming to an end at the moment. They've been in play for quite a while. Our likes of our sickness absence reporting and the stuff within the survey will give us an indication of the support that we need to put in place moving forward. And when we go out to contract provision, we will be homing in on that. So we have an opportunity as well to strengthen that particular area around specialist support.
Okay, can I just...
Do you want to come back,
Yes,
Councillor?
please, thank you. So are you saying, so forgive me if I put words into your mouth, are you saying it's not just about rate of pay, it's also about people feeling empowered, in other words, career, possible movement and progress and other terms and conditions? Is this a factor? So that is a question. And I did want to talk about the gender pay cap very, very briefly as another question.
That's the next agenda item.
Of course it is, sorry. Of course it is. Silly me. Go on then, yeah.
Please, Sam, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So in the staff survey results, we've split the question around pay and benefits. So in previous years, we've asked about pay and benefits together collectively. This year, we've asked the same question for a comparator purpose, and that's the one that's increased by 17.5%, but we've separated the salary opportunity and the benefits opportunity. Now, those figures are not as high as we'd like them to be, particularly around the salary side of it. And that's why generally the 17.5% being an increase would indicate to us that where people are saying they would recommend Medway as a place to work, that people are more interested in the overall package of support that Medway is providing, and it's not just about pay. So, you know, triangulating those answers together, that would give us an indication that in particular is the case there.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Fern.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. First of all, Sam, thank you for sharing the results. We've certainly come on a long way from, over the years, because we've always spoken about these survey results, and going back to, some time ago when I chaired this committee, we never saw the survey results in this level of detail. So thank you for making that positive change and bringing that to us, because, it was something that we asked you for a time, and we've sort of finally got there now, which is great. It's good for us as members. As other members have sort of alluded to, the discrimination, harassment, bullying is a concern. It's a concern to all of us, but especially that point around who to contact if you're experiencing an issue. I've just tried to look now, what the policy is, and there is a policy there, and I don't know, I find it difficult to believe that 20% of people don't know who to go to. I've just found that looking in a few minutes, so I don't know. I mean, do they have the same sort of access to what we have, or member of the public, or whatever, so I just think maybe we need to share that and get that better understanding of how they don't understand, because I struggle with that, because it's quite easy to find that. In terms of participation rate, 55.5, are you pleased with that? I think, in my company, we do the surveys, and it's around that rate. It's around that rate, sometimes a little bit higher. Sometimes they get us to do certain things to try and increase participation rate. So given that we're 3% down on last year, how do you feel about that, and what are you going to do differently to try and, up that rate? I know you touched on that to Councillor Hamilton's point, but, what are you personally going to do, or your department, to bring that up? Very positive to see the sessions that you've organised to report results back. That's great, and that's exactly what people want. They fill this in, and sometimes I think people feel, we're going to fill that in, nothing's going to happen, we're never going to see any feedback. So I think that's really good, the plan that you've put in place. And the last point is around which I think Councillor Hamilton mentioned, the 31.4% of managers. Now, what percentage of managers is that? How many managers are there? What percentage is that? Because potentially the figures are a little bit skewed there. I don't know. Stand to be corrected on that one.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fern. Thank you for your comments and acknowledging the work that we're doing. I do appreciate that. I guess you're right. So you've done a bit of a search, and it does say who you can contact and what the process and policy is. We've got some work that's underway at the moment around us introducing some artificial intelligence that will create a chatbot, so people can easily find the information. So the idea is we're trialling it with wellbeing at the moment, but it's going to be across all of our policies in HR. So similar to what you would do with Copilot, where you just tap in a question, it will give you the answer. We have tested it at the moment just to check it's put in the right policies. We've got some issues with some of our links going to various things and some old policies in the system that were being brought forward. So we're tidying that up at the moment. So whilst people could go into the A to Z, go through the policies and find it, it can be quite click through, and it can take a bit of time. So we want to be in a position where we're offering a bit more of a quicker service for self-serve. So that is going to be hopefully one of the things that will help. We want it also to see if it's available not just on computers, but is there anything we can do through mobile phone apps, for example, because not everybody's at the computer, because again, our policies are on MedSpace, you've got to be at a computer, you've got to log into it. If you're somebody who doesn't use a computer often, you might have even forgot your login. I don't know, right? So until we get into the detail of where this is coming from, it's hard to say if it's an area that is probably more remote and doesn't use IT every day. What more do we need to do around it? So I think we've got a couple of things that we're looking at, a couple of solutions in to make life easier for people to navigate through the policies, but we do need to understand where that percentage is coming from, where people are saying they don't know how to do it. The other point is we have quite a comprehensive induction, and again, within the staff survey results, the induction comes out really positively in terms of people getting inducted. We're forever refreshing that and looking at the stuff that we're covering. Whilst we cover all of the things that we think people need to hear, if we're getting reports like this coming out from our organisation, we need to be reflecting in the the induction, some of the policies that are going to give people the confidence that if these things are happening, they'll be able to do it. So whilst we don't want somebody to come to the organisation and say, hey, we've got a problem with discrimination, bullying and harassment, it's how we make sure that people know where to find those things in terms of those policies. So I just want to go back and have a little bit of a reflection across the induction material that we put in place, particularly on our HR policies. My personal opinion on the 55.5%, I think you know from previous meetings that we've had, I'm disappointed. I do want it to be high. We took a lot of feedback last time. We changed the survey as a result of it. We clearly didn't listen enough about the channels in which people wanted to engage with us, or we didn't ask the right questions. So for me this year, it is generally about the right channels that people can have a voice. And you know, traditionally it's a staff survey, it's a one set of questions, it goes out in one particular format or a piece of paper. We've got to move away from that. People want to engage in different ways, so we've got to think about other channels where those parts can happen. And if somebody wants to answer part of the survey as opposed to all of it, that's okay. They can do that and just have no view on the rest of it. So we've got to change our approach, and we've got a bit of time to think about how we can do that, most definitely, and engage with those services. So yeah, disappointed that it's not higher, but acknowledging that this channel of use that we have and we've had in place for a number of years obviously isn't going to increase any higher than where we are. So we've got to change our approach moving forward. And I'll take away the point around the 31.4% of managers. I don't know what figure that is off the top of my head compared to the managers we've got within the system. So if I can come back to you on that, then I'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy, Councillor Fern? Yep. Thank you. Any other member? Okay, before I move to the Vice Chair, I think it's common across both sides of the room here, and from yourselves as well, that the bullying and harassment, there is issues there, and also from the trade unions earlier. And welcome that the trade union offered to work together to try and cut out some of them issues that we've got. So on that, can I move to the Vice Chair, please?
Yeah, thank you. So the Employment Matters Committee is asked to note the report. I've got three specific pieces of feedback from this meeting. The conversation about asking for comparator benchmarks of those who wanted to leave, and there was a kind offer for comparable data, particularly with the care and NHS sector. Further clarification regarding the clarity of the loneliness question, including investigation of lone worker arrangements in that, and the conversation we just had about the comparison of the manager engagement data. And then the previous JCC also offered feedback that unions expressed concern regarding the bullying and harassment related statistics, especially satisfaction with the outcomes, and requested further investigation into this. They're open to working with the council and they welcome the positive response to this. They requested previous year's figures for comparison with these statistics, and also noted the wellbeing figures, especially related to loneliness, and the 20% don't know who to talk to, and ask that this be investigated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Is that all agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 6, gender pay gap. Nicola, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the Equality Act 2010 Regulations 2017 requires all employers of more than 250 employees to report annually on their gender pay gap. This report for the committee gives insight of the Council's result for this reporting year ahead of publication on the Council's public website by the 31st of March 2026 and on the government dedicated gender pay gap reporting website. The Council does not have a specific duty to publish data on ethnicity or disability pay gaps, but this data is also provided in the report. Some of the key headlines of the report include a continued trend and further reduction in our gender pay gap for 2025 to 3.8% compared to 6.4% last year, and in comparison to last year's national average of 13.1%. In comparison to our neighbouring local authorities, in 2024, we are performing better than our nearest county council and rank 7th highest for gender pay gap out of the 14 local authorities in Kent. It is important to note that 3 of the local authorities ranked lower have negative gender pay gaps, i.e. men are paid less than women. The declaration rate for ethnicity in the council is over 95%, and the ethnicity pay gap is minus 4.5%. and the median minus 11.8%, which shows that ethnic minority staff are earning a higher rate than in comparison to white ethnic employees. Proportionally, a greater percentage of ethnic minority employees are employed in the upper middle and upper quartile job roles, and this would therefore explain the pay gap. Declaration rates from staff around disability is at 58.5%. The disability pay gap is minus 0.1% and the median minus 0.8%. There is activity within our Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Action Plan to attempt to improve the disability declaration rate amongst all employees across the council. The next steps for us are to go away and undertake some more detailed analysis and identify any positive actions we could take in relation to our gender pay gap results. The committee are asked to note the report. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Peake first and then Councillor Hamilton, please. Councillor Peake.
Thank you for that. In the report, it says about the hourly rate of pay has decreased from 7.9% down to 3.5%. So obviously this is wonderful, and I was just wondering how you managed to achieve this. However, there should be no such thing as a gender pay gap in the first place, and never should have been, especially when it's people doing exactly the same job. But I'm pleased to see that we are getting there. So I was just wondering how you managed to achieve that. You see that the hourly rate gap has gone down as well, which is obviously good news. And sorry, you called me so quickly, Chair, I didn't get my stats together. But what the other one that concerned me was the difference about the bonus pay gap, saying that the men get paid a certain percentage gap, pay increase, and the bonuses that women get is significantly lower. So just wondering what's the story behind that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peake, for your questions. So how have we achieved the reduction in gender pay gap? As the person leading the Council's pay review, I'm going to cite that as contributing to that, because what we have now with our pay ranges is 3 spot points within each range, so an A, B and C level. Previously, people could have been appointed at any point within the pay range, research out there might suggest that men are perhaps more able to negotiate higher salary ranges on appointments, posts, whether you want to take that or not. But what we have now is a very structured approach to salary within each of the range of our posts. And I think that is already showing how we are ensuring that all staff are fairly and transparently assessed against their role, against a competency framework, and the salary rates are more standardised for all roles there.
Okay, thank you. Good answer.
Happy with that, Councillor Peake? Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. So I have got 2 questions about the report, and I've got a question looking forward into the future. So you may not be able to answer that one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Okay, so I'm really pleased that we are a local council that believes in transparency, that we publish ethnicity and disability pay gaps along with the gender pay gap. I would say that any gender pay gap, whether it's positive or negative, is not acceptable. And which leads me on to my first question. So we're kind of hovering in the middle. We're halfway down the league table, so to speak. What other steps can we take to get to the top of the league table that we're in? And also, another question, given that we are able to look at ethnicity, disability and gender pay gaps, is there any way that we can do some sort of intersectional analysis on that as well, just to be even better at what we do whenever it comes to that, to see if there are any things there that we might need to look at as well? And then the other question is the future question, which is obviously we're hovering halfway down the league, in terms of our gender pay gap. We want to get to 0. We want to be the best employer that we can be. We want to know that everybody who comes here will be paid equally, fairly. But we also have the local government reorganisation coming up. What potential impact, or have we done any impact assessment on what that might mean for gender pay gap, disability pay gaps and ethnicity pay gaps moving forward?
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. So in terms of what other steps can we take, our proportion of males and females is very imbalanced. So we have nearly 75% of our staff are female and 25% are males. So sometimes any small movements can create quite big differences in some of our stats. So if all of a sudden we recruit 5, 10 additional males into the organisation, that can really kind of sway some of the figures. What is really important for us is to look at the quartiles of pay as well, and so part of the ongoing next phase of analysis and stuff is to really kind of dig down into some of that detail, and that links into the intersectionality as well. Again, it'd be really interesting to see the dynamics of all three of those. We're really pleased that we have got a gender pay gap that's now at, in the 3% category. Are we ever going to hit 0? I don't know. Statistically, I'm not a statistician, but I don't know if that is, even possible. It's, what to get to that very minute, figure. I think. Yes, I think we're in a really good place, but there's always some improvement. And the fact now that the ethnicity pay gap is a bit of an outlier now in terms of our gender pay gap. That's, there should be things that we could look at and take action with there. So some challenges to get to 0, but always an aim that we'd want to go for. In terms of the LGR impact, that's not something that we have looked at this moment in time. Great question, and we need to take away and have a think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Hamilton. Thank you. Any other member? Yeah, Councillor Hatwell.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Pink mentioned the bonus, but I mean, you see just such massive variation between last year when it was minus 14.3 for women, and this year it's 3.8 for men. How long do you need to take to actually work out statistically whether there's a problem or not? Because 2 data sets doesn't mean anything to me. So how long will it take before we can actually start looking at meaningful statistics to actually work out whether we've got a problem or not? Because that's just simple variation to me.
Thank you, Councillor Hatwell. There was a question from the last time that we reported the gender pay gap around that specific question, and I've answered that in a briefing note. So apologies if that has not reached you yet. No, apologies if it hasn't reached you yet, because I've only just done it very recently. And I sought some advice from a much more qualified colleague than I, and we've provided some examples of why we might get such a variation with the bonus pay. The bonus pay is predominantly linked to social workers, so a very small group of our staff, and again, high proportion of females, but then if you have a small change in the number of males, that completely sways the percentage in that bonus pay. So hopefully, if you haven't got the briefing paper response yet, you'll get that soon, and that should hopefully clarify what that is. Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
Yeah, just a very short response. I was sort of debating with this out on the last item, but I think I'll say it here. Just a positive feedback in that both this item and the previous item feel a little bit like the report card, or as a teacher at this point in the year, the exam results. And in this item and in the previous item, there are so many pieces of evidence of things you've said to us in these meetings that you'd hoped policies would do, that now we can see the evidence of. And I think what you've just shared with MedPay is one example. I think another example was the learning and development work that we'd looked at and the positive responses there. So really just to congratulate and thank you, because it's really lovely to see the data showing the story that when we looked at the policies, we hoped the data would do. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone else? No, obviously it's good that we're going in the right direction, but as we all agree, more work to be done, and thank you for all the information there. Vice Chair, please.
Thank you. So there was a slight amendment discussed in the previous meeting, which unions were pleased to accept and had no further feedback. And then I've got the action about sharing the briefing note that's been prepared with the response on bonus pay variation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that agreed, especially on the amendment? Seconded. Go on in. Agreed. Thank you. Probationary policy.
Thank you, Chair. So the probation policy has been reviewed as part of our cycle of ongoing review and in anticipation of the new Employment Rights Act. We want to have that lens on all of our policies that we're reviewing at the moment, all by waiting for the outcome of some of what that it's actually going to be. So we have made some revisions and updates to improve clarity for employees, specifically in this policy, about extensions to the probationary period, the appeal process, and we've also put in a change to allow for temporary staff to issue probation if they become permanent after 6 months in the temporary post, and overall better guidance on the probationary processes. Consultation was undertaken with our trade unions, our staff forums, and a DIA assessment was also completed with no adverse impact identified. The plan is subject to approval of this committee to hold briefing sessions for managers to ensure they understand the changes within this policy, but also an opportunity for us to re-promote with them all the tools that are available to them and the importance of ensuring that managing probation is all part of that onboarding process into organisation, and how important it is to set the right objectives, ensure the right conversations are happening right from the very start of employment. And we'll also ensure communications about these revisions will be shared throughout the HR newsletter, so that all staff and managers across the organisation are familiar with these changes. So the committee is asked to approve the revisions in the probationary policy set out as Appendix A to this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member? Councillor Peake.
Yeah, thank you. This sounds like a very good idea. Am I right in thinking that it's part of we want to keep our staff because we don't want to keep them waiting? Therefore, it's good to encourage them to become permanent. So that is a question. However, I do know that probationary periods are very important, especially in the support stroke care world. There's a lot of people think they can do their job and then they actually can't. It's time you get to the point where, if you're aware that some colleagues have been made permanent after 6 months and you haven't, I hope that you're going to say to me, they would know by then the reasons why. It wouldn't come as a shock. We do have a proper training support system going on as you go along. Because again, I'm aware of where managers haven't got their act together, there's something smashed the paperwork and gone into what.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So we recognise as part of our overall attraction, retention, recruitment phase, probation is a key part of that in terms of us being able to onboard our staff with a thorough induction, so they're really clear from the outset all of the expectations, and as part of the probation process there are specific periods at 12-week, after week 1, but 12-week and 20-week probation review meetings, so that there are no surprises along the way, and appropriate actions, support, investigation, whatever it might need to be, reasonable adjustments, etc., can be put in place at the earliest opportunities. So one of the things that we do know, even though as part of our recruitment process, for example, we have a health questionnaire, we know that people are fearful of telling us about disabilities or reasonable adjustments that they need to be able to do their job as part of the application and interview process. So the probation period for us is a really good opportunity to talk to our staff, and to make them really aware of all the support that's available to them. And if we do need to put reasonable adjustments in place, we can be supportive around that within that probation period. At the end of the probation, 6 months or 12 months, if you're a newly qualified social worker doing your ASYE, there will be a formal kind of overall review. If the probation needs to be extended at that point, again, it shouldn't come as a surprise because we've had those regular meetings in place and be addressing all of the any issues that arise at that point. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Nope. Vice Chair then, please.
Thank you. So the committee's asked to approve the updated probationary policy set out as Appendix A to the report and approve the implementation of policy across all areas of the organisation. The committee is asked to support the provision of adequate communication and training to support the effective uptake of revised policy. And just to mention from the JCC, unions welcome the enhanced structure and had no issues, including with a slight proposed amendment to wording that was given at the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item, flexible retirement policy. Nicola, please.
Thank you, Chair. So currently we have a policy statement about flexible retirement, which is not very helpful to staff, managers, anyone really trying to think about flexible retirement as an opportunity. So we wanted to address that and have put forward a full draft policy for EMC's approval today. So this policy now provides transparency, clarity around eligibility criteria, consideration of the personal impacts of flexible retirement, making sure people are really aware and that they're making informed decisions, and clear procedures that need to be followed, which should enable staff to be able to properly consider this as an option for them, rather than just retiring, retiring flexibly and staying with us as a council for longer will be beneficial for us with an ageing workforce to keep those experienced staff, particularly in those areas where we have difficulty recruiting and retaining staff, where there's national issues around that. It could enable us to keep those knowledgeable staff in place for longer and share that knowledge with new and experienced staff in our organisation. Again, we undertook consultation with our trade unions and staff forums, and a DIA assessment was completed with no adverse impact identified. Briefing sessions for managers will be offered, and communications about these revisions will be shared through our HR newsletter and other avenues if this policy is approved by EMC. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Nicola, or the policy, so I should say. I do have one concern, and in that fact, the one-way street, that if you take the 40% reduction, etc., there's no way back. People's personal circumstances can change in a heartbeat, bereavement, divorce, all those sorts of things. I would like to see some sort of back door in there. I call it a back door that, unless, exceptional circumstances, somehow, so that people, if their circumstances change within whatever you deem reasonable, rather than they've just changed their mind and they prefer to stay, because I understand that. I would like to see some way back that if their circumstances change, or it could be discussed and as as an exceptional circumstance, and there might be a change, something like that, because it does seem very, very final, especially if people's circumstances change.
Thank you, Councillor Hackwell. I'll have to take that one away, if I'm honest, because I'm not sure if there's any pension implications. If people have taken their pension, I don't think that's within our gift to reverse that, necessarily. So I don't know.
I do think once you get to 55, soon to be 57, you can take your pension and work. It's not, I know plenty of people that took their pension and carried on working in the same employee. It's like, I think the policy here is you have to be missing for 1 day, isn't it? Before you can come back to work or something stupid like that. It's a very short period of time, I think.
Yeah, look, none of us are pension experts, and none of us are certainly not experts in the local government pension scheme. There might be scheme rules. Each pension has its own rules as well as legislative, so appreciate that. Councillor Peake.
No, I think that's a really good subject that Councillor Hackwell actually brought up. At the back door, remember that. A lot of things I'm referencing to, by the way, was when I was working for another local authority, better not mention them. And I'm aware of somebody that left at director's level and he had to leave and do the full works, and 2 weeks later he came back as a consultant and he was laughing because he was getting paid so much more money as a consultant doing exactly the same job. And I thought, how is this good management of the public finance? He was happy, we was glad to see him back, but not necessarily the best use of the money there. So I'm just hoping that we are not, that's not common practice here. Open question.
In terms of, we definitely have clear criteria when it comes to redundancy, so people can't be made redundant and come back to work the next day. That's not an option. In terms of our flexible retirement policy, that's not what we're proposing, because they'll be staying within their current role, but just at a reduced rate. So that shouldn't be an issue there.
Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Cook.
Yeah,
please.
so I am really pleased to see something like this come forward. I think it, given that we do have an ageing workforce, I think this enables us to think through succession planning in more detail and over an extended period of time potentially. And I also think it gives members of our staff who are older options to think about their future as they're planning the next stage of their life. So I wholeheartedly think this is a great thing to bring forward. It's nice having a statement. It's good to have it backed up with a policy.
Yeah, nothing to comment there. Thank you. Councillor Cook.
This is one of those questions at the risk of sounding really silly, so I'm really sorry if I've got this wrong. But I've just looking at the equality statement, and I just wanted to check something. I've checked it against our EDI equality statement, and it's the same, so it's probably me. But it's where we put care experience. So at the full council, we accepted care experience as a protected characteristic. But here, it has those with care experience as an example, and then it says on the grounds of, and it doesn't have care experience there. So just because I've just noticed that, on the grounds of race, ethnicity, nationality, whether it should be in there, I'm sure there are legal people that know that far better than I do. It's section 3.1. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member? No. Vice Chair then, please.
Thank you. So the recommendation is that the committee is asked to approve the updated flexible retirement policy as set out as Appendix A to the report and approve the implementation of the policy across all areas of the organisation. The committee is asked to support the provision of adequate communication to support the effective uptake of the revised policy as well as any training requirements. And then we've just requested further investigation into the impact of pension. I hope I've covered that enough. And also just a further look into the equality statement and inclusion of care. And it'd be worth looking at that in the EDI policy as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Meeting closed. Thank you very much.